What if I told you the most powerful person in the room is often the quietest? A lion doesn't need to roar. Its presence alone demands respect. In a world where everyone's shouting to be seen, true strength is silent. And that's exactly why it's terrifying. A wolf doesn't bark to be feared, it just arrives and suddenly the entire forest holds its breath. In today's noisy world, where attention is currency and everyone fights to be the loudest voice in the room, silence has become the ultimate flex. You don't need to shout to prove your worth. You don't need to plead to earn respect. And you definitely don't need to react to every insult thrown your way. The ancient Stoics knew this secret well. Real authority doesn't speak, it radiates. It's in the way you carry yourself. It's in your steady eyes, your calm energy, your unshakable posture. The kind of presence that makes people pause, not because you demanded it, but because something about you feels anchored. So here's the real question. How do you become that kind of man? The one who doesn't need to raise his voice to change the atmosphere of a room. The one who walks in and instantly shifts the energy without even trying. In this video, we're unpacking the silent strategies of the most formidable minds in history, from the Stoics to modern-day leaders, so you can build an inner presence that commands attention, earns respect, and protects your power. All without saying a word. Welcome to Life Through Stoicism, where you don't just learn how to master the world, you learn how to master yourself first. Because here's the truth, before you can command fear or admiration from anyone else, you must first conquer the emotional climate within. Think of someone who inspires you or intimidates you without speaking much. What do they all have in common? It's not noise, it's stillness, not forced calm, but authentic inner control. They don't walk into a room trying to prove they belong. They enter the space already whole. And that's where Stoic wisdom begins. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, that isn't just philosophy. It's a blueprint for power. Because a man who can't regulate his emotional state will always be a puppet to the emotions of others. He'll seek validation. He'll snap when disrespected. He'll crumble under pressure. He's reactive. He's noisy. And people can feel it. Now imagine the opposite. You enter a tense room, people fidget. Shoulders are tight, some look nervous, others guarded, but you sit. Still, present. Calm, but not stiff. Relaxed, but razor sharp. Your eyes move, not like a predator, but like someone who sees everything and needs to prove nothing. That's control, that's presence, that's power without words. The Stoics called this ataraxia, inner tranquility. It's not passivity, it's the practiced art of returning to center again and again, no matter what chaos surrounds you. He who angers you conquers you. Elizabeth Kenny and the Stoics would agree. So next time someone throws shade, mocks you, or tries to provoke a reaction, pause. Watch how others give away their energy. They get defensive, they raise their voices, they explain themselves when they don't have to. But you hold the silence because silence forces others to sit with their own behavior. It disarms them, not with hostility, but with presence. Here's a real-world example. A corporate executive known for being the last to speak in every meeting, not because he lacked confidence, but because he had nothing to prove. His silence made people listen, harder when he finally spoke. He wasn't just quiet. He was calculating, listening, observing, absorbing the room like a sponge. And when he finally did speak, everyone else went silent. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Out of curiosity, out of respect. His words didn't echo because they were loud. They echoed because his silence spoke first. That's the natural result of someone who knows how to manage their inner world. Someone who doesn't project insecurity outward, but holds steady within. You see, if you truly want to command fear and respect, you don't do it by trying to control others. You start with something much simpler, yet far more difficult. Control your breath. Control your emotional reactions. Control your body language. Because people feel your energy, even before they hear your words. They notice when you're not reactive, when you don't flinch, when your stillness carries confidence rather than fear. And just that changes the entire dynamic. Yes, words are powerful, but like currency, when used too much, they lose their value. That's why the most respected individuals are rarely the ones who speak the most. They're the ones who speak the least but mean every single word. In a society obsessed with broadcasting every thought, silence becomes rare, and what's rare becomes powerful. Stoic wisdom teaches us this simple truth. Sometimes the strongest reaction is no reaction at all. Why? Because silence creates space. And in that space, people begin to reveal themselves, their motives, their insecurities, or simply their discomfort with their own noise. Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. Abraham Lincoln. But let's be clear, this isn't about staying quiet out of fear or timidity. This is strategic silence. This is the kind of silence that listens with purpose, that observes not just what's being said, but also what's being hidden. The forced chuckle, the twitch in someone's tone, the tiny gap between what they say and how they act. Most people talk just to avoid silence, but you use silence to observe, to gather insight, to stay 10 steps ahead. Let's put that into a real-world example. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone throws a subtle jab your way, a passive-aggressive comment dressed as a joke. Most people would react instantly, fire back, defend themselves, or laugh nervously to diffuse the moment. But not the Stoic. He stays still. His eyes meet the insult, calm, unmoved. Maybe he gives a faint, unreadable smile, or maybe nothing at all. And just like that, the energy in the room shifts. The attacker feels exposed. Everyone else turns to see what you'll do next. But you don't take the bait. You don't play their game, you stay above it. That's real power. And it's built not on dominance, but on restraint. Because you don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to validate your worth with every breath. Every time you choose to observe instead of react, you gain an edge. You collect information. You begin to see people for who they really are, what drives them, where they feel small, how they try to control the room. He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command. To command, you must first understand. To understand, you must watch, and to watch, you must be silent. Machiavelli. This is where Stoicism meets strategy. The man who listens more than he speaks, who observes more than he acts, becomes unpredictable. He becomes difficult to manipulate. He becomes powerful, without ever having to say it. So the next time you feel the urge to fill the silence, don't. Let others rush to speak. Let them expose their thoughts, their fears, their hand. And you remain still, grounded, one step ahead. There's a reason the alpha wolf doesn't bark the loudest. He doesn't need to. His very presence sends a ripple through the pack. The energy shifts, heads turn, tension rises. That's not arrogance, that's presence. And presence has nothing to do with volume. It has everything to do with power that doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't matter what brand you're wearing, how tall you stand, or how deep your voice is. What truly defines presence is the silent power you bring when you say absolutely nothing. So how do you build that kind of energy? Stoicism gives us the blueprint. The formula is simple in theory. Control yourself, and you control the room. The first and most powerful principle, stillness. Most people can't sit still. They're constantly shifting in their seats, checking their phones, adjusting their collars, glancing around nervously. But you become calm, incarnate. Your body stays still. Your breath is slow and steady. Your every move is intentional. Even the way you walk into a room, measured steps, grounded eyes, shoulders relaxed, sends a silent message. I'm not here to prove anything. I'm here because I belong. A Stoic knows this. People read your energy long before they hear your words. If you walk in anxious, scattered, overly reactive, you've already lost influence before you've said a thing. But if your posture is firm, your gaze steady and calm, your movements smooth and controlled, you send a very different signal. One that's not about dominance, but about self-possession. Let's talk about eye contact, one of the most misunderstood forms of communication. Insecure people avoid it. Aggressive people overdo it. But the Stoic? He holds it just right, steady, relaxed, and intentional. Just enough to say, I see you, I'm here. Never too much to intimidate, never too little to seem unsure. You don't stare to challenge. You look to understand. And the power in that look, the quiet clarity of it, is something people feel even if they don't know why. Ever had a moment where you walked into a room and people turned to look, even though you hadn't said a word? That's not coincidence. That's silent command. That's presence. But here's a detail most people miss. True presence doesn't come from how you act. It comes from how grounded you are inside. You don't need to fake confidence. You build it, slowly, patiently, from within. Through discipline, through living your values, through detachment from the chaos around you. The Stoic is unaffected by praise and unmoved by insult. So when he enters a space, people feel it. They listen even before he speaks, because he's not looking for their approval. He doesn't chase attention, and that is what makes him rare. And what is rare is respected. And what is respected holds power. Here's a relatable scenario. You're at a social event. There's someone loud, flashy, trying too hard to impress everyone, cracking jokes, seeking laughs, dominating the room. Most people play along. They laugh nervously. Some even try to outshine them. But you don't. You lean back, watch. Maybe offer a small smile, not mocking, just calm, knowing. And when the moment comes for you to speak, you don't rush. You don't try to steal the spotlight. You speak with clarity, intention, and suddenly the whole room adjusts to you. That's control. Because true influence isn't about taking up more space. It's about anchoring it. It's about becoming the kind of person others notice, not because you seek it, but because your calm presence stands out in a world drowning in noise. That's Stoicism in motion. It's not about being better than others. It's about becoming better than your former self and letting that quiet strength speak louder than any words. In a world addicted to noise and performance, the quiet man is terrifying. Why? Because silence is misunderstood. People assume if you don't talk much, you must be shy, unsure, or even weak. But those who live by Stoic principles know the truth. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. It's restraint, it's clarity. It's the signal of someone who doesn't waste energy trying to impress, convince, or dominate. A true Stoic knows this. The fewer words you speak, the more power they carry. Let's break that down. Most people overshare. They spill their emotions, expose their plans, even reveal their insecurities, just to feel seen, to be liked, to feel connected. But in doing so, they leak power. They become predictable, easy to manipulate, emotionally exposed. Now, imagine the opposite. Someone who listens more than they speak, who only speaks when there's something worth saying. Someone who knows the value of holding energy, not just expressing it. When someone knows how to guard their thoughts, protect their emotions, and not be easily provoked, that person becomes a mystery. And in a world addicted to constant sharing, being a mystery is magnetic. It's not that you're cold, it's that you don't react like a puppet pulled by every emotional string. Let's take a real-life scenario. Someone tries to provoke you. A co-worker throws a passive-aggressive remark, or a family member brings up something that used to get under your skin. The old version of you might have snapped, explained, defended yourself, maybe even raised your voice. But the stoic you observe, you pause, and then you say nothing. Maybe you give a calm nod, maybe a small knowing smirk, or maybe you just look at them and move on. What happens next is subtle, but incredibly powerful. The power shifts. Your silence makes them uneasy. It forces them to reflect on what they just said. It disrupts the emotional momentum of their attack. And without saying a word, it sends the message, I'm not playing this game. I've seen it before. I've outgrown it. And just like that, you disarm them. You show that your self-worth doesn't need defending. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, you always have the option of having no opinion. There is never a need to turn things upside down. That's emotional discipline. You don't need to clap back at every insult. You don't need to prove your intelligence in every debate. You don't need to validate your pain with endless storytelling. You protect your energy by conserving it. And silence, it doesn't just guard your peace. It builds anticipation. When you speak, people listen more closely. When you move, people pay more attention. When you act, they realize you were never asleep. You were simply watching, waiting, calculating. That's how you command fear and respect, without raising your voice. So next time someone tries to bait you into a reaction, remember, not every battle is worth fighting. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every fool is worth an answer. Stay silent. Stay calm. Let your presence speak, not your ego. A Stoic doesn't walk into a room and try to dominate it. He observes first. He studies before he speaks. He evaluates before asserting himself. He understands the landscape before he steps forward. This is a forgotten skill in modern society. Situational awareness, the quiet superpower of those who refuse to be caught off guard. Because you can't command fear or respect if you don't understand who or what you're dealing with. Most people walk into situations emotionally blind. They project their insecurities. They try too hard to be liked or feared. That's not power. That's just noise. But you walk in like a wolf, calm, quiet, watching, no need to bark, no need to boast, because you're reading everything. The energy in the room, the ones who talk too much and reveal too much, the ones who say nothing and might actually hold the most power. The tension beneath the small talk, the real intentions, hiding behind the polite smiles. You don't get distracted by surface-level noise because you're playing a deeper game, the game of human nature. And Stoicism, it gives you the edge. It trains you to detach from your ego, which means your goal isn't to look impressive. Your goal is to understand what's really happening. Let's be honest. The man who needs the room to validate his worth often has none. The one who quietly sees through everyone usually holds real power. Remember what Epictetus taught. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. In every setting, from the workplace to a negotiation, from family dinners to conflict, the one who listens, observes, and waits will always have more power than the one who demands to be seen and heard. You walk into a business meeting. 1. Guy is clearly trying to establish himself as the alpha. Loud voice, firm handshake, dominating every conversation. Everyone in the room is watching him. But you're watching everyone else. You notice who nods a little too quickly to seem agreeable, who avoids eye contact, who waits to speak only after others do. You're not there to compete. You're there to understand the room. And because of that, when you finally speak, everything changes. Your words are sharp, to the point. You ask the one question no one thought of. You deliver the unexpected insight. You say the thing no one else dared to. Suddenly the room shifts. The loudest man in the room realizes he was just outmaneuvered by someone who never raised his voice. That's real power, because respect doesn't come from being the center of attention. It comes from being the one who doesn't need it. You become that person by practicing this Stoic principle. Observe more than you participate. Speak only when it adds value, and always remember, your silence says more than most people's speeches. There's an unspoken rule among the most powerful men in history. They don't explain themselves. They don't complain, they act. This isn't arrogance, it's discipline, because every time you over-explain, you surrender power. Every time you complain, you expose weakness. A Stoic understands. Those who need to be understood are still not in control of themselves. Think about it. When you explain too much, what are you really doing? You're seeking validation. You're trying to justify your worth, often to people who don't even deserve access to your inner world. And when you complain, you're handing power over to something external. You're admitting it has control over your inner peace. That's not Stoicism, that's slavery. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." He didn't go around trying to prove his character. He lived it. Here's a truth that hits deep. People respect mystery more than they respect explanation. They respect emotional composure more than emotional venting. The more you complain, the more others start seeing you as weak, undisciplined, and less trustworthy. You may think venting helps you connect, but in reality, it often makes you smaller in their eyes. Worse yet, it makes you smaller in your own. Let's make it real. Someone wrongs you at work. They shut down your idea in front of the whole team. You feel the sting of betrayal, disrespect, injustice. You want to vent. You want to talk. You want to defend yourself. But what does the Stoic do? He acknowledges the pain but doesn't react emotionally. He reflects, he plans, he executes. No public drama, no emotional breakdown. No need for pity, just strategy. And when the next opportunity arrives, he delivers with such undeniable excellence that even his enemies are forced to respect him, if not fear him. That's what it means to never explain, never complain. It's not about repressing emotion. It's about redirecting it. You take the energy you would have wasted explaining or complaining, and you turn it into action, building your craft, building your character, building a reputation that speaks louder than words ever could, because, remember this, the most dangerous man in the room isn't the loudest. He's the calmest, the quietest, the one who is always ready, but never rattled. The most dominant person in any room isn't the one shouting commands or puffing his chest. It's the one who says nothing, who offers a slight knowing smile and lets his results speak on his behalf, because while others are caught up arguing, justifying and complaining, he's too busy becoming undeniable. That, right there, is Stoic power in its purest form. In a world addicted to noise, calmness is rebellion. In a culture obsessed with instant reaction, stillness is strategy. Here's a truth most men don't learn until it's far too late. The calmest man in the room is never the weakest. He's the one pulling all the strings. People often mistake calm for passivity, but the Stoic knows better. Calmness isn't the absence of power, it's power under perfect control. Think about it for a second. Who do you trust more in a crisis? The one panicking and flailing? Or the one silently assessing, calculating and acting with precision? Exactly. In the space between stimulus and response, the Stoic wins. Not because he's louder, but because he's clearer. Let's bring this to life. You walk into a room thick with tension. Someone tries to provoke you, subtle digs, sarcastic remarks, baiting you emotionally. Most people fall for it. They react, they defend, they fight, they fall apart. But you pause, you breathe, you observe, and then, maybe, you say absolutely nothing. Because nothing shakes a manipulator more than someone they can't destabilize emotionally. They feed off your reaction. So when you deny them that fuel, they crumble. This is why the calmest man always wins. He's not distracted by ego. He's not enslaved by impulse. He's not desperate to prove a thing. He lets the storm rage around him, but remains absolutely still within. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." A Stoic doesn't fight imaginary battles. He doesn't get pulled into emotional wars designed to drain him. Instead, he chooses every response like a chess master choosing his next move, not to impress but to win, quietly. When you're calm, people project strength onto you. They wonder, what does he know? Why isn't he rattled? Where does that confidence come from? That's the beauty of Stoic calm. It confuses the shallow and earns the respect of the wise. Let others chase the spotlight. Let others scream to be noticed. You stay calm because your silence already speaks louder than their shouting. So, next time the world tries to drag you into chaos, remember, the calmest man in the room isn't just surviving. He's dominating. And when you leave the room, what lingers? Not your words, not your actions, but your energy. Not the loudest man, but the one no one could quite figure out. That's who people remember. That's what the Stoic understands. Impact isn't made through volume. It's made through presence. We live in a world obsessed with saying something, but those who leave the deepest mark, they often say the least, because real presence doesn't announce itself. It echoes in silence. So how do you build that kind of unforgettable presence? Let's break it down. First, leave behind unfinished energy. The human mind hates open loops. We obsess over things left unresolved. That's why silence, especially after an intense moment, often leaves more impact than any clever final word. Think about the last time someone didn't reply to your message. Did you move on? Probably not. You thought about it. You replayed the last interaction. You wondered what it meant. That's the power of unfinished energy. It haunts, it loops, it lingers. The Stoic uses this to his advantage. He doesn't explain everything. He doesn't close every interaction with a neat, polite bow. He leaves space, so others are forced to reflect, because mystery is more powerful than clarity. And what people can't fully understand, they can't forget. Second, let your state, not Your words speak. Most modern men try to impress with long speeches and big statements, but a Stoic man doesn't impress with speeches. He impresses with presence. He doesn't walk into a room trying to be noticed. But the stillness, in his eyes, the steady rhythm of his breath, the grounded strength in his posture, they all speak for him, and people feel it. He doesn't seek approval. He doesn't chase attention. He simply is. That calm state of composure, restraint, and depth leaves a more lasting impression than any clever quote or passionate speech. People walk out of the room wondering, who was that guy? Not because he said something shocking, but because he stood there completely unshaken. Third, disappear strategically. One of the Stoics' greatest powers is his intentional absence. He knows this simple truth. The more rare your presence, the more valuable it becomes. He shows up, leaves an impact, then steps away. No clinging, no over-explaining. He exits conversations while they're still open. He ends interactions with a nod, not a drawn-out explanation. And it's that distance, that incompleteness, that makes people remember him. They don't miss him because he entertained them. They miss him because he left them wondering, and the things people can't define, they replay in their minds over and over. That's how you stay in people's memory, not through noise, but through unresolved presence. In the end, the Stoic doesn't just want to be seen. He wants to be felt in the silence, felt in the uncertainty, felt in the space he once stood, long after he's gone. Because while loud men are remembered in the moment, the unreadable man is remembered in memory. That's what real influence is. You don't need to raise your voice to be remembered. You don't need to argue to win. You don't need to prove your worth to people who can't even see their own. You only need to master yourself, master your silence, master your energy, and let your stillness become the loudest force in the room. The Stoics understood this. Machiavelli wrote about it, but few ever live it, because it's not easy. It demands restraint when your emotions scream, patience when your pride wants to react, and the courage to become a mystery. Not because you're hiding, but because you're done explaining. So next time someone underestimates you, smile, say nothing, and walk away with presence. Because the most powerful men in history weren't the loudest. They were the ones who walked into a room and changed the atmosphere without saying a word. If this video spoke to something inside you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. This isn't just a philosophy, it's a strategy for life, and your evolution starts here. Stay silent, stay powerful, stay stoic. See you in the next video.